There are fears that the housing market recovery may have run out of steam. The average cost of a house has gone up by just 0.01% this month. So what does it mean for those looking to buy or sell their homes? Here's our business correspondent, Joel Hills.
The economic recovery may feel fragile, but house prices have been booming. The question, is another property bubble forming? No, say the Nationwide, who believe that in the short term, record low interest rates are here to stay.
I think there'll be broad stability in house prices. I don't think we'll see the same increases that we saw last year when we had double-digit jumps in house prices. I think prices are going to be broadly stable, and that's probably the best outcome for the market as a whole from a long-term stability perspective.
Now, there are those who will scoff at the idea of a housing bubble. They'll tell you that high prices have everything to do with demand and supply. Everyone wants to own their own home, and there aren't enough new homes being built. But to buy a property, most people need to borrow money, and that still isn't always easy.
Right, this is a typical character terrace property.
John Harding has just sold this 3-bedroom house in Swindon for £240,000 at the peak of the market. He says he'd have got 270. Confidence has improved, but the big problem, he says, is credit. First-time buyers don't have big enough deposits to get loans.
Banks and building societies insisting on at least 10%, in many cases much more than that, and it's just freezing the market. So the first-time buyer market is very difficult.
Over the last year, house prices have surged in spite of the deep recession, but the volume of sales has been quite weak, less than half of what it was at the peak of the market. And not everyone thinks the worst is over.
We're forecasting a 30% fall in prices over the next 2 or 3 years. When you consider the banks haven't any money to lend, when you consider the economic situation we're in, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of job losses. In fact, from The Guardian today, we see potentially 1.3 million job losses. And finally, the collapse in the buy-to-let sector, down 80% in the last 2 years. You have the recipe for the biggest house price crash in history.
So bubble trouble? No one really knows what will happen next. So much depends, though, on what happens to unemployment as the public sector cuts are introduced. Because when people lose their jobs, they sometimes lose their homes. Joel Hills, Sky News in Swindon.